Thank you, and now to your questions.
Good afternoon. My name is Wendy Wheeler Coltrane, and I've been a City Club member for a couple years. This question actually is for Deborah from our table. How does Deborah find homeless kids? Do they all apply to the schools, or does she spend time actually out in the community? How does that work?
Thank you. There are several ways that students are identified in 4J. One of the primary ones is when they enroll. In the enrollment packet, there is a residency questionnaire. That is a place where a family or a youth can self-identify as homeless. Hopefully I follow up with them, give them a call, see what their needs are, and start there. I get referrals from every place. Counselors, bus drivers, nutrition services, and of course, I work very closely with the shelters. I'm at the Mission, I'm at First Place many times in a week. So those are the main ways. And then word of mouth, First Place, and then they'll call me. Mission, then they'll call me. So it's I think those are the ways, yes.
Bob Cassidy, City Club member. This is for all three of you, and maybe for the benefit of the city councilors that are here today. Do you think that the community would accept the idea of using the present city hall, the empty city hall, for at least a temporary housing place for the homeless?
This is Dan. Well, I certainly would, you know. I don't have to be convenient. It's also been suggested as a potential site for Egan Warming Center, and that really warms the cockles of my heart, because our church is one of those sites. And we were just talking about the increase in numbers right now. We're very fearful of what's going to happen this winter. We're already seeing numbers like that happen in the midst of winter. William was talking about snow days. On snow days, everyone comes out of the woodwork, you know, trying to find shelter, because it's much more difficult out there. So what's it going to be like when we have a real snow day if we're already at those kinds of numbers? We had several times when the Egan Warming Center was open, we were at capacity, at least in terms of our site downtown. And a couple of times we were over capacity. And then we're talking a building that's over 100 years old. So I'm fearful of what it's going to be like this winter. I would love to see more space wherever it is. It doesn't matter to me, City Hall, Civic Stadium, you know, some existing building. I mean, there are many ways we could use them. I would welcome it.
And I'll just add that regardless of where they are, I'll find them and I'll send the school bus.
Yeah, I mean, we need to work together to be as creative as we can to support both the existing services that are all in trouble and to broaden out in some way that works, because we can't just ignore the families. And I want to say again, this is about families, but you can't ignore the singles either, because they're folks and they're people too, and we need to find a way in our community to meet the needs in a humane way. It speaks of the quality of life in our community.
Jerry Smith, City Club member. I liked what all three of you said, and I noticed around this rather sophisticated room that there were tears in most eyes from all three of your talks. It's a hurting situation, and we can't go into denial over it. As a community, we've got to find places where people can work to volunteer. Do all three of you have volunteer spaces where people might be able to come and put themselves to work?
I fly solo most of the time.
At First Place, our staff is so small that we can't do a lot of, quote, management of volunteers. One place we do need volunteers, though, is we used to have this incredible preschool, and we still have this facility, and we have no staffing to cover it. We'd love people who could come and spend some time and help us open that facility and you know, have a play group with some of the kids, or relate to the families in some way like that.
So I come out of a church, so let me first say, go to your local church if you're a part of a church. If you're not a part of a church, find a local church in your community. And I don't mean necessarily to join that church. That'd be wonderful too. But I mean, just ask, is there a place I can volunteer? Are you participating in any of the shelter programs? Because right now, all of the sites we have for the Egan Warming Center are religious based. That says something to me right there. Churches, synagogues, and so forth. And we can all use volunteers to help out with those programs. For us, when we open the Egan Warming Center, 80 to 90% of the volunteers that are operating out of our building actually are not members of our congregation. They're people of the community. For that, you need to be trained. You just can't walk in the door and offer to volunteer because it requires training. There are trainings available. If you just go to the Egan Warming Center site, just Google Egan Warming Center, EAGAN. And you'll find more information, and you'll learn about when the trainings are for that. But there are just a host of other things that we do. We have a Sunday breakfast. We have a lot of community people that help serve that breakfast every Sunday morning, serving 200, 250 people. I assume the mission uses volunteers. I mean, there are just lots of volunteer opportunities. Come and let us know you're interested. We'll find a way to get you plugged in.
Bobby Sarles, member, a guest at our table, asked that we ask this question, and we're glad to do it. What would it take to light a fire under the city council to give Opportunity Village the use of some city land? I'll add soon.
Phone calls. Yeah, an email. I mean, seriously, I mean, that's the most important thing you can do. Contact your city councilors, contact the mayor, let them know how important this is.
All real change comes from the people.
This question is directed, I think, to Dan, but anybody can answer it. I'm Joel Corin. I've been a member since April. It appears that public opposition to proposed sites for the homeless, like 13th and Chambers, is based on fear of crime. What has been the experience in Tent City Number 4 in Seattle and Dignity Village?
I can't speak to this, too much to that, but I'll ask maybe one of the other folks who are here with us to come to the microphone and answer that. What I can say is that from my own personal experience, the folk that we're talking about serving are not the people out there, you know, robbing your houses and so on and so forth. I mean, this is the frustrating thing, that so many people view the homeless as criminals. Please understand, the homeless are victims of crimes way more often than they are perpetrators of crimes. That's the first thing you got to realize. Yeah. Victimized over and over and over again. So we just need to change our perspective. And I understand the concerns about the site in the Jefferson neighborhood. I totally get that. But we also see this as a benefit, potential benefit to communities in providing a healthy place where the unhoused can be, rather than unhealthy places in the bushes and in the alleys and so forth. We need to get them out of the bushes so that we can help people deal with the issues that they face. So we have a guest here from Dignity Village. I'll give the mic to him to just respond.
My name is David Sampson. I'm currently the donations coordinator at the village. If I seem a little uncomfortable, it's because I'm out of my element, and I am. But the fact of the matter is, as far as safety and law enforcement goes, demographically speaking, we have the safest neighborhood in Portland. You walk outside of our gates, your chance of getting robbed or beaten or raped increase exponentially. It's the safest neighborhood. Where we go, crime goes down because we have a vested interest in staying safe. And when things happen outside of our community in the immediate area, we respond and we clean up things. We keep people from doing things. And if you look at the statistics that the city of Portland publishes, you'll find out that this is very true. We are the safest, cheapest model.
Thank you.
Frank Carlton, member for a while. I had the question, I learned a little bit about something called Station 7. And I wonder if any of you know much about that and Safe and Sound, and are there any other facilities like that in Eugene?
Well, they're the folks where youth can go, and they've got a wonderful program. I've been in human services one way or another. This is my 47th year, and I've never seen a community where the groups work together better than this, and where we pull together. But all of us have been massively cut in terms of services we can provide, staff we can provide, things we can do in the last year. And so Station 7 does a wonderful group work with street kids and with kids that are trying to go to school on their own. There's a lot of problems they deal with the youth, but they've been cut too. We're all really struggling right now to deal with the folks that are out there.
We mentioned the service station as well, because I think some people may confuse the two.
Yeah. St. Vincent de Paul also runs the Eugene Service Station besides First Place Family Center, and the service station is for people who don't have kids in their care, no one under 18 allowed. And they serve a couple hundred people a day are staying there. They don't stay overnight, it's a day shelter. They're seeing 4,000 to 5,000 different individuals in a year coming through there. They do an amazing job, and they have a staff about like First Place, very small. And again, those places, the people protect their own place at the service station. If it was a dangerous, disruptive place, the one or two staff people that are there at a time couldn't possibly cope with it.
I'll just add that Station 7 has a ladder program. They have 2 units out back where after a certain amount of time, a student can actually have a unit on their own. That's the step to getting into more permanent housing. They house, how many do you think they house? That's shelters. They shelter, I'm going to say 20 youth at a time. Community garden, community meals, responsibilities. Right now they were cut and they do not provide anything during the day at all. So a youth cannot even come there until 4:45. And then they can spend the night and then they have to leave by 8 or 9 in the morning. So there's no day shelter time there at all.
They can't go to Station 99.
No. Right.
Repeat that.
Yeah. Yep. Where do they go?
Downtown.
I'm Mary Layton, a member for a while. And I just wanted to let you know that if anything, Deborah's undercounting because we're not even on her map, and we always have homeless kids. There are teens who are just figuring it out and coping, but who are making a very smart decision to couch surf. But I was curious about the whole idea of private property. I know because I bump into these people all the time. There's people who hang on to bits of property all over town, which eventually they're going to turn into student housing or apartment buildings or something else. Those people are not so vulnerable to the vagaries of public opinion as elected officials are. And I wondered if they have been approached to use their land temporarily with city support to make sure it's safe. There's not refuse problems or anything like that. To have temporary encampments that would be on Dan's model.
So let me answer that in 2 ways. First of all, certainly we would be very open to that, and if someone has a large enough parcel that could accommodate a pod of 30, we would love to hear from anyone who would be interested, and we would work with them very closely on how to manage that and so forth. And yeah, it would make many things easier, but you still have to deal with your community, even if you own it privately. So there's still going to be community issues. There are still codes, land use laws, and all of that come into play. So it may simplify it somewhat, but not entirely. It doesn't remove all the barriers. It helps. The other way I would address that is what we're envisioning is, a family or an individual comes in and builds a structure. We want to help that person transition into the community in other ways, not remain in this village permanently, but this is intended to be a transitional program. One of the ways someone could transition out is to take that structure to a private piece of property through the backyard camping kind of program or somewhere else where they would be allowed to put that structure and then be on their own. So there are 2 different ways that private property can be very useful.
Herb Merker from last year, City Club. Do we have any data on other communities in Oregon, like size, Corvallis, Salem, Albany, what their level of homelessness is.
I just have the homeless student count for all of Lane, or actually, yeah, Lane County. Is that map on your table, this one?
No.
Okay. There is on some. So I have that, but not homelessness in general. What do you have?
I just got something today from the Oregon Center for Public Policy. It says, Oregon poverty rises, worse for children and minorities. And they point out that according to this, the most recent census, 17.5%, up from 15.8 and up from 12.9 families that are, and individuals that are in poverty. And they point out that last year, 23.6% of the children in Oregon, almost 1 in 4, lived in poverty. And that's up from previous years.
Our friends from Dignity Village, part of the reason they're here is they were just down in Ashland talking to the community in Ashland about their situation there. And while the numbers in Ashland aren't anywhere near ours, still they have a significant issue there. And so the community of Ashland is talking about ways that they can create a Dignity Village type place with a much smaller number. It's present in every community. And the more that we can diversify and create more places around the state, the better off we will all be.
Kerry Thompson, City Club member. The folks from Dignity Village brought up a question about, they say that the Oregon Department of Justice, and that by law there can only be 2 sites for a transitional campground and the unhoused per city or municipality. And just wondered if anyone knows about this, how could it be expanded or circumvented? It's just another law in the way, it seems like, that of having, Dan mentioned, having several villages around, and, you know, that would run up against those laws.
Huh. Yeah, that's news to me. So that's why it's great to have our friends here from Dignity Village, because they know more about this than some of us do. So, yeah, that's going to be a challenge, another challenge. If we're only limited to 2, don't know what we'll do. Or maybe at least 2. I don't know. We'll have to do some exploring of what that would mean for us. I don't have an answer.
Mike Rose, City Club member. And Dan, you mentioned the 503C opportunity here.
Correct.
For fundraising. And our question is, who's administering and organizing and coordinating this effort?
So there is a steering committee for the Opportunity Village, as I mentioned, that Gene chairs, and I've been working very closely with Gene in trying to develop. We are talking literally even today, talking to individuals around our community, looking for folk who have broad experience in business and social service and experience especially with nonprofits. But basically it will be a self-standing board of its own, so it won't be under anyone. But we are creating a new entity for that purpose. Tax laws allow people to already donate to it, so we can actually receive donations even in the process of forming it. So it is in the works. Please talk to me if you know of anyone, if you're interested, or Gene, and we'd be glad to talk to you about that.
Joanne Ernst, City Club member. It's been almost a year now since the Occupy camp was broken down, and part of that negotiation for the people that were homeless in that camp were some promises from the City Council. And I noticed there are a few City Council members here tonight. One of those was a significant amount of money that would go towards helping to house those people through that particular winter, which never happened. They opened the Wheeler Pavilion for 2 nights, and that was it. And another part of that was to open more day centers that would have lockers and things like that for people to store their belongings during the day. I was wondering if you know what happened to that money, if it can be channeled to help the Opportunity Village and other programs that are ongoing, and if there's, give us an update on if there's been any other day centers open besides the one on 99.
No, not that I know.
Not that I know.
Yeah. I don't know what has happened to that money. I don't know if there's someone here in the room who's willing to answer that, who would like to step forward. I see a city councilor waiting in line. While he's pondering that, let me just share with you. Come on, Alan, it's your turn. But let me just share with you, because I did mention that I'll give him time to think about his answer. There were 6 goals set by the task force. Only 1 was approved. Let me just mention those other 5 goals, because I'd like to hold the city council to this as well, that these are all things we need to do. Create and support day use centers, already mentioned. Improve traditional and non-traditional healthcare access. And again, out of that Occupy experience, we now have a new medical tent that's operating on Sundays, still in the downtown. A van now. And a van. Okay, wonderful. So we've got some wonderful new things developing, but that's something that individuals in the private sector has done on their own without the support of the city necessarily. 4th, continue and expand existing services to the unhoused. 5th, improve laws and ordinances that criminalize and block homeless individuals. And then lastly, and I think this is the easiest one for the city council to do, create a commission to continue to explore solutions. So we need a commission, something like the Human Rights Commission, that can continue, make sure we keep this in front of us to work on this issue. So Alan Zelenka, City Councilor, please help us with this and any other question you want to ask.
So, as I break the microphone, so I'm either brave or stupid for being up here. There was monies allocated to do a couple of these transition services. I know there was expenditures on quite a few of them, and I don't, sorry to say, I can't remember off the top of my head all the different numbers that flow through the city council and all the different issues. That's not one I can readily repeat back to you. But I will find out and get it back to the City Club folks, and they can announce it next time for you. And by the way, I am supportive of all of the recommendations of the commission, of what the task force did, including creating a commission. One of the issues that the council is going to deal with coming up is, how do you cite these things? Every place that has come up, somebody says NIMBY, not in my backyard. Every single time it goes around. I'm curious how you guys deal with that. I know some places they rotate it so it doesn't deal with it, but how do you deal with the NIMBY part of it?
Yeah, that is probably the biggest challenge. And let me begin by saying when the Opportunity Village identified this site in the Jefferson neighborhood, we were the ones that went to the school and said, we really like this property near this school, and we want to have conversation with you, with your faculty, with your parents. And the principal there was very good in supporting that and issued the call out and helped us organize that meeting so we had that opportunity to listen to those concerns of those parents. So we've taken that all into account, and that's probably going to be true in most neighborhoods. So, it just takes a lot of education. I think one of the things that has to happen is people need a different image in their mind of what it means to be unhoused, because their image right now is that person standing on the street corner who doesn't look very good, or their image is some of the bad things that happened at the Occupy camp, or their image or other encounters they have had with the homeless. We need to give people a different image. If I could get everyone to come down and volunteer in our Sunday breakfast or at the Egan Warming Center or at First Place, when you have those experiences working with the families that Deborah works with, when you have those experiences with these families, you get a different image. And now you understand these are human beings with aspirations and desires and hopes the same as any one of us. And when you see that, and then your heart begins to break for them, and then you're willing to do something. And we saw this in the Occupy experience. A number of those folks that were living there were taken in by the host of this community, who once they got to know someone who was unhoused and said, this person isn't such a bad person after all, and took them into their own homes because they got to know them as human beings, as people. That's what we've got to do, to show that different image. So we've got a lot of work and education to help people see past the exterior, that they can begin to see that person underneath and begin to realize this is someone who deserves another chance, and if we give them that chance, really can make something of themselves, give them a little bit of help them with some of the skills that they need to learn, help them with whatever it is. And yeah, there's issues, sure, but they're not unsurmountable. They are things that we can deal with. We can do better. We must do better.
two statistics that came across my desk. One is that the visible homeless is less than 5% of homeless altogether. And the second one was, had it there? I'll remember it. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Before we close, I just had a question myself. When I think of places that have vacant space that has, kitchens, bathrooms, and is child appropriate, one of the biggest owners of mothballed property with those characteristics is 4J. And accepting that 4J is in a budget crunch itself, has there been any exploration of whether funding from other public agencies could be used to house homeless families with school-aged children in vacant 4J facilities?
I'll just say up front that First Place Family Center is 4J property, and they lease it to us for $1 a year. So there's one piece right there in terms of what they're doing with it. And gee, if somebody wanted to give me a school, we'd try to figure out how to fund it.
Yeah, and that's why I say there are tremendous resources within the community already. We just have to find the public will to use those resources to open them up. And yeah, obviously we got to find ways to work with the population so that in any way we use those resources, we take care of it and make sure that we put it to good use. I would say one more thing about the whole NIMBY issue, and part of the key is finding not just the right neighborhood, but the right site that, yeah, maybe isn't right next to residences or schools, or there are sites in this community that I think would work that have good natural borders. And that's really key, because one of the real things we learned out of the Occupy experience was when we have no control over the borders, anybody can come in. That's when you have the problem. That's when you have the criminal element. So you've got to have good control of the borders so you can maintain security, so that it is a safe place, so that only the people who are supposed to be there are the ones that are there. And then you won't have the kind of problems that we had at the Occupy site. So finding that in a neighborhood that doesn't have, that's not up against a private residence or next to a school or next to something else that's going to create a problem, and has those good natural borders. It also needs to be a place that is easily accessible. And I think probably Dignity Village folk could tell us this, that out by the Portland airport where they're a long ways away from community services. We need to have a place that has good access, public access, and is not stuck out in the country. That's not going to help us. And transit, yeah, right.